take a while. And this is how you come down. All right. Whew. Well, that was a day. That was another full one. I think for my wind down before I go in and whip up some awesome fish with this stuff you put on it, dry, I believe. You put it on dry. I got it in Alabama. Holy shit, was it good. I'll remember the name of it later. Oh man, was that good. I'm going to put it on the mahi fish. Dorado. So good. Oh, I wish I could remember the name of it. Panko? No. No, it's a stuffed duck from Alabama. And I got a few boxes of it when I was down there after my friends. We went and caught all those crappie and stuff. And we cooked a bunch of that fish and they did it in that stuff. Oh my God, is it good. I'll clue in later and show you guys. So anyway, I got to make another road trip tomorrow to the big city. So I'm going to do tomorrow morning's video right now. Be a good little wind down time for the end of the day. I just did all sorts of stuff. Hand pulled a whole bunch of Scotch broom. Oh my God, I hate that shit. Hand pulled it while the ground is all saturated. And then I actually raked up a whole area of the property where the backhoe was last fall. Anyway, lots of production. Now listen, a little while ago, I was searching in my inbox and I came across an email from Scott. There's a bunch of photos. Now these photos, this is like way back in the ultra beginning of when I started to talk about this openly on my YouTube channel. And if I could remember the name of this person, I'll have to dig up those emails because they were something else. There was a rural family, and she showed us photographs of her barn, corral, fences, and everything, and where these weird things are running around her property. And they put trail cameras up there, and they got the most damnedest bizarre frickin' photograph. And I guess I must have sent it to Scott, because Scott sent me the photo back with a bunch of filters. And I don't know if anybody has seen anything similar to this or not. But this is like a holy shit. And furthermore, I do not believe, like everything usually comes out, when people make things, or make paper mache things, or make dummies, or make pretend stuffed beings. It always comes out. The truth always comes out. The costume's shown later on. The gorilla suit is shown later on, or shown where you can buy it. I've never seen anything remotely close to resembling this trail camera before, since, or after. Nothing. So I'm going to reshare this. Check this out. So the first one is the original that the lady sent to me. And I believe she didn't want me to share it for the longest time either. And then there's the rest of the filters that Scott Carpenter threw over the photograph. And I believe there was another being in front of it, if I recollect. There's a shadow from another being in front of it. There's more than one. How frickin' bizarre is that? Now, has anyone seen anything remotely similar to this? If you have, let's hear about it, all right? Let's hear about it. Man, that sure brings back the memories. Back in the day, remember? I first came forward and the whole world wanted to talk to me. The whole world, all the different teams wanted me on their team. So bad. And if I didn't accept the invitation, then they just went to attacking. So it was such a weird experience. And all the people who wanted their channels promoted, all the people that wanted their movies promoted, all the people that wanted their books promoted, everybody wanted me to be their best friend. I took the hook a few times. Remember back in the beginning too, Patterson's wife, allegedly, has a whole pile of collectibles, pieces from the Patterson film, and allegedly body parts. They were going to use me to expose the whole truth to the public. But then for some reason they got spooked and scared. There's so much shit went down in the beginning, right? Thank God I shook them all off and realized at an early stage the most important place for my energy would be all of you, the people, all of us together. Don't you think? What's this? Is this one that I remember I was starting to read one earlier today, and it was like a mile long. Where are we here? All right, let's get into her. This email is titled Fear and Flying Rock. Hi, Steve. You haven't read my story below, so I'm resending it with more. It's about my out of body. In 2015, we had a family get-together about 2 miles east of Idaho City, Idaho. This was Labor Day weekend, and all of my kids, my grandkids, and great-grandkids at the time showed up. We went there a couple of days earlier to save some camping areas. There was a lot of traffic in that camping area because of the holiday. We had all of our four-wheelers with us, so the little ones were driving around to the campsite. A very busy weekend. The older one were driving on the gravel roads. And at the end of the holiday, everyone but Bob and I had left. We stayed a couple more days and did some exploring on our own. We went over the ridge and down past Rabbit Creek to Babor Flats. There had been a flood on the river, and the bridge at Babor Flats had some damage. Therefore, the bridge was only open to 50-inch vehicles and no cars or trucks. We went over it to look around and started to take the trail, the old road, when I noticed how closed in it looked. The trees lined it on both sides and over the top like a tunnel. And a fear kicked in. As I'm always in the lead, and all of a sudden I just turned around and headed back. My thoughts when the fear kicked in wasn't Bigfoot, it was people. There wasn't anyone that I could see, but the thought of coming across a pot field with guards or something else illegal that could have been a danger to us. Bob didn't even ask why I turned back. He just followed me. We had traveled this road before many times in the truck, but that was about a decade or two before this. In 2005, we were headed to Port Angeles, Washington, and driving on the highways. And while we were going on Mount Rainier, we had the mountain on our right, and our left was all downhill. And all of a sudden, a rock the size of a basketball or larger came flying across the road from the downhill side. No way. Going about as fast as we were driving. And just as it missed our car, a car came from the north, and Bob said it must have hit the rock that was coming for us. I no way would believe that. If it would have hit a car, it would have caused it to wreck. That rock was so fast and heavy, for if not to destroy a vehicle. After watching your videos for the last year or so, I'd learned about the rocks being thrown by this Sabe or Bigfoot. That's the only thing I can now come up with besides it came up the hill and not from the top of the hill down. Thank you for reading my stories. I'm a believer, and I have already sent in a few Bigfoot stories that you read last year. You can read my name, Marilyn Lenz. Lens. Okay, it turns out the other email was nothing to do with our topic here, okay? At all. And it was a long one. Which is fine. Fine for me to read, but not to share on here because it's about 20 minutes literally of someone's life history and her siblings and aunts and uncles and brothers and everybody, how they died. It's just I guess it was a friendly ramble about someone's life. But I couldn't share it here, okay? Now, moving along. This is titled Hunt Pamphlet or Email and a Story for Steve. Okay, I got two emails here. And there's a follow-up short one, which was, P.S. I will add that the creature at the Kalmiopsis was definitely bipedal. I was counting 3 to 5 stomping steps between trees that it would hit and shake before throwing brush and sticks approximately 25 yards between trees. Then, boom, 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 crash. Well, you get the idea. Big and badass. Don't take any shit out. All right, that was the PS to the email I'm about to read. Hi, Steve. Hope this reaches you personally. To begin with, I would like your hunt prices for elk, moose, and mule deer. I don't sell hunts. Sorry. Next, a story concerning those damn things you've decided to apply some time with. The question is, which story? As I, like you, was raised at the edge of wilderness and spent many of my time as a youth and adult in the mountains. I'm 60 at this time, and I also guided and made drop hunts for some great hunters and friends. I guess to start, my first experience probably set me up to have the same mind frame as you do for the subject of the ancient tribes that lives in our forests. In 1979, I was working in the Grants Pass area building a bridge and hit it off with one of our new hires. I took him fly fishing on the Rogue River, and he in turn invited himself and my wife to spend the weekend in the Kalmiopsis wilderness, 8 miles behind a locked gate at one of 3 cabins on a mining claim. After entering the gate, it was 8 miles, 4x4, low range to the cabin. Upon getting to the cabin, I noticed a pungent smell around the cabin I did not recognize, and noticed no sign of wildlife, frogs, crickets, etc., in the immediate area. My wife assessed the situation and stated, I'm not going to the outhouse alone at night, about 50 yards from the cabin. I asked the caretaker about the immediate area and the creek about a quarter mile below the cabin, and he said it had great fishing and dumped into the ocean a couple miles downstream. So with an uneventful night, other than being way too quiet, first thing in the morning I was off to the creek with my fly pole with my Australian Kelpie dog Grizz to guard me. I say guard me as I usually at the time only carried a .22 pistol for snakes. And Grizz lived up to his name as he would take on a bull, cattle, or bear. No problem, right? So we made it to the creek, crossed, and started up the opposite bank as I saw a pool and ran in that direction. I stayed way up on the gravel bank and was starting with my casts to the creek so as not to scare the fish. I had just made water on my second cast when I heard a disruption on the ridge to my right and on my side of the creek. I say disrupted because it was a noise that I had never heard before. It was like a growl, huff, howl. Then a big-ass crash. I started winding in my line quickly so I could face and confront what was occurring. The ridge was a rocky razorback that tied to the creek about 50 yards ahead of me. In razorback, I mean it was rough enough and narrow so that a rock rolled would go off one side or the other and not down the middle of it, with huge old-growth timber that had never been logged. I looked up the ridge where the sound was being emitted and heard a big thump and a crash, which then started down the razorback, with different trees being hit, shook, branches and brush being thrown towards me, and Grizz coming closer at an amazing rate of speed. Then stopped about 50 yards ahead near the creek, and dead silence. My attention went to Grizz, who at this point decided he was going to approach and attack whatever had disrupted our quiet morning, and was threatening his human. He got to about 25 yards from the disruption, stopped, put his nose up, then promptly spun and ran past me, heading back towards the cabin, I assumed. I totally forgot about being armed or being a tough-ass 20-year-old mountain-raised man and attempted to beat him to the cabin, which I did not accomplish. I do remember the same smell as around the cabin hitting my senses about the time Grizz ran by me. My wife asked what was wrong, as Grizz had beat me to the cabin, and she knew he would never leave my side, ever. I explained with loss of breath and stated we're cutting this trip short, on which she agreed. I never told this story until this year, as I didn't want my manhood questioned. We later visited Oregon caves, and I picked up a book that described an attack on 3 mining cabins in the Kalmiopsis by Bigfoot creatures that fit the mines where we were at. Sorry. I brought my wife's attention to the book and asked, "Do you suppose?" Because when she had asked what I thought had ran Grizz and I off the river, I simply replied, "I don't know, but it was big and bad." A couple years later, we were driving to a project at Quinault at about 3 a.m. and we're about halfway to Quinault from Aberdeen, Washington, when I lit up a huge ass beast with a million candle power headlamp and running lights up on the bank on a corner at about 25 yards. I say huge because it was at least 8 feet tall, standing on an 8-foot bank, which put its head about 16 feet above us. We could see from its navel to the top of its head perfectly clear, as it had 2 10 to 12-inch alders spread with its hands and was looking directly into our lights. I will say shoulder to shoulder was impressive, at least 3.5 to 4 feet wide. It had less hair on its face, chest, and hands, and was black in appearance. The lines on its face were also impressive, huge. The road was wet, and I hit the brakes, spinning the light to the area the creature had been standing, to see the 2 alders swaying back into their upright position. I was trying to get my senses back when my wife asked if I was going to get out and look for tracks. I asked, "Did you see what I saw?" She said, "Yes. A Bigfoot." At that point, I said, "Nope, I'm good." Once again this year, neither of us spoke of either of these experiences or the many, many other experiences I've had hunting, berrying, mushrooming, and hunting wood in our mountains. I've always kind of tried to ignore them and their sign in the woods, as we spend much of our time in the mountains. I've been asked, what would you do if confronted by one of these things? My answer, I now pack a .460 Smith & Wesson. I hope any confrontation is nice on their part. We do at this time photograph some of the prints and structures we find, which, if I may say, are about to overload my phone. Thanks for your backing. The subject does need to be explained to the general public, for protection and knowledge, if nothing more. I, like you, do not believe them, primate. There's too much weird in connection with them, as tracks don't just disappear in the middle of snow-filled meadow after 3 miles of tracking. Please let us know if you're ever threatened by higher powers due to your approach in this subject, because we have your back as well. My sincere regards, good luck, Al Davis, Eastern Oregon. There you go, you guys. Somebody who is well versed in knowing that these beings exist firsthand. Sounds like you've seen a lot of sign, right? That Quinault, I was out there. That's where I went to that casino and spoke with Dave. There's a lot of stuff goes on around there. It's pretty flat ground around there, too. Oh, there you go. Appreciate that email, my man. Keep us posted if you got anything else that's happened as of late, all right? The title of this next email is titled Sasquatch. Excuse me. Just drank a whole pile of water before I started. Steve, I'm sending this screenshot to you because I know it's in the right hands. I recently sent my story in about how I had seen a female walking down an old strip mine road, humming calmly to what I think was a newborn baby. She gave it water, then turned and walked away. I don't know how much about this photo. I don't know much about this photo, but it was posted on Facebook today by a delivery man. He states that as he pulled up to where he was to deliver a package, that this thing took off through the woods, breaking trees and moving very quickly. To make a long story short, this photo was taken in Waterloo, Ohio, which is maybe a 15-minute drive from where my encounter took place back in '86. Please keep my name anonymous due to ridicule from family and friends. Thanks for the stories and for having faith in good, honest, hardworking folks. All right, there's the photo. It's a little tough. I don't know. I mean, obviously it looks like a being, but also I don't think that's that cutout, though. Do you guys? You think that's that cutout? You know, a cutout that everybody puts in the property? What do you think? Crazy, right? What do you think? I guess I could put it in the video. I don't know if that'll make a difference. Save that in there. And there you go. From another member of the Club of No Return, the club where nobody asked to join, but you automatically join, and there's no getting out of it. Period. There's no getting out of this club. Once you're in for life. Isn't that a crazy club? The Club of No Return. Once you know, that is all she wrote. You're in the club. Even if you pretend you're not in the club, you're still in the club. Sighting of something strange. It's the title of this next email. Steve, came across your channel a while ago and been loving all the good sighting reports. I've been intrigued by this topic for a long time and spent a lot of time sifting through the bullshit for credible information. I've just seen the most recent video of the guy from the UK who moved out to the US and is now a police officer. Yes, you're right, his superior officer is a dick. It's prompted me to tell my story as I'm from the UK also and ex-military. I've never told anyone about this, and it's only since I've come across your channel that I feel comfortable doing so. I served 23 years in the Royal Marines and left in 2011. During that time, I served in various places including Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, twice in 2006 and 2009. Saw some real shitty things, but that's another story. My experience was back in '96. There was a huge joint UK/US training exercise on the east coast of the US. We were based out of Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. We began the training exercise with a big amphibious landing on Onslow Beach, then gradually moved inland. It was a few nights into the exercise, and there was a number of us moving somewhere on foot for most of the night when we went to ground and were stationary for a while. I was sat on a sandy bank which rose up behind me to an area of scrubland covered in low bushes, which were at about my shoulder height. As I was sat there, I remember smelling something quite strong, like a sulfurous, pungent smell. I put it down to me smelling myself, as we'd been out in the field for a few days. I then remember looking over my right shoulder, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something only 10 feet behind me quickly move away, which startled me. I rose up on my knees and turned around, only to see another one run away from behind where I was kneeling. I have no idea what I saw, but they appeared white or light color. I only saw them from the back as they ran away, and they looked very big. At the time, immediately reminded me of something like a Michelin Man, but it's the way they moved that creeped me out. I can't really explain it by writing. Whatever they were both the same type of thing. I didn't see any other features as it was dark and probably about 0100, but they were both big and fast. Shortly after this, we got the signal to move off, so we were in a different area by daylight. but there were other people in the vicinity. But I don't think anyone else saw anything, and I didn't say anything to anyone. I never have. It was somewhere in North Carolina, on the Lejeune training area. I'm not sure if it's Sasquatch related or something else weird, but I will say 100% that it wasn't part of the exercise and they were too big and fast to be people. And how they moved was too weird. That's the thing that's creepy, is how they moved. I'm happy to follow up this email with a phone call if you need clarification on anything. Big fan of the channel. What you doing, Steve? Watch your back out there and stay safe. Please don't reveal my name should you read this out on the channel. Okay, man, I got you back. And I wonder how many other men or women saw the same description, the same thing in the same area. Whether it be the same time or another time, or who knows, maybe another state or province. Anywhere in the world, really. And there you go. Another one. And another. And another. All right, this next email is titled Bigfoot Story. Hey man, first I'd like to say I'm a huge fan of what you do in your channel. Thank you for being there for those of us who don't feel comfortable doing so. I'll keep my encounter short because I know you're on a time crunch, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm from a small town in the hills of Kentucky, and around here not much is said about these things. I was 15 when I had my encounter. A friend of mine and I were hiking in the woods behind my grandparents' house. It was hundreds of acres of trees, but in the very back there's an old abandoned strip mine pit. We'd always grab sticks, rocks, or anything and throw off the high wall, which was 80 feet straight down to the water. And as we were finding things to toss in, I found this huge rock, somewhat buried, and probably 250 pounds plus. I called my friend over to help me pick it up, but even with both of us, we couldn't budge it. We lost interest, eventually, and went on hiking. And as we got probably 200 yards away from the spot with the rock, I heard this big kadoosh. I think I read this. We went back over to see what sounded like someone jumped off the cliff. That's when we saw that the massive rock was gone. No drag marks. Not that it had been rolled, because it was 40 feet from the edge. Nothing but the indentation where it once was. It looked like it had just been plucked from the ground and thrown in. We never seen or heard anything, but we got the hell out of there and I haven't been back since. I can't say it was or wasn't Bigfoot, but what else could have sat there and watched us struggle with it, and after we leave just toss it in like a pebble? I've always wondered if it was just trying to show us its dominance because it knew two of us couldn't pick it up. Anyways, again, thank you for your time and your no bullshit policy. Please don't use my name. Okay, man, I got you, and I didn't read this before. That's interesting. And not a first of a human struggling with something in the woods or on the water or on a boat in the river full of fish or whatever, stuck boat, turning their back, and something else takes care of their little issue, their physically challenging issue. Okay, this one's pretty lengthy. I'm going in. As in, I'm going in and I'm all in reading this email. Appreciate that email, my man. And welcome to the club. Once you know, you know. A Night I Will Never Forget is the title of this email. Hi, Steve. Thanks for reading this. I greatly appreciate everything you do for the honest people who have had life-changing encounters. You still get made fun of and ridiculed for telling an honest, trustworthy story about an event that changed their beliefs and mindset. I will not put my name in this email because I do not care about the attention or the idiots out there who will laugh this off. But I want this story out there to ease the minds of all the others who have had similar encounters. Let me set the scene for you. It was March 25th, 2014, and I was a 24-year-old soldier from rural West Tennessee, just getting back from a second deployment to Iraq. It was the last thing I would ever do in the military, as the 6 years I spent there was enough of an experience for a lifetime for me. I was in the process of getting my honorable discharge and getting back to the civilian world, and I decided to go on a hike and use the wilderness to get back to my roots of growing up hunting, fishing, and camping, and just exploring the woods and water like I did with my grandfather and father growing up. Where I decided to hike was a place I'd been visiting for years on family vacations in the Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee. But this time I was spending 5 days and 4 nights in the woods by myself, with nobody around, to just think about my future. I was hiking approximately 80 miles that would take me up and around Mount LeConte. LeConte? I've heard a lot about this trail section and wanted to give it a try for myself. The first 4 days and 3 nights were pretty uneventful outside of seeing a mama black bear and her 2 cubs, which is pretty cool. And the last night was when my life, beliefs, and respect for the unknown changed. That night I was staying in an old settler's cabin that I heard about from a local mountain expert who has hiked these mountains for 30 years and knew these mountains like the back of his hand. The cabin was tiny and falling apart, but it was still pretty cool to see where these settlers stayed way back then. It was about 6 p.m. when I got to the cabin as the sun was starting to go down and the temperature was dropping quickly. I got the cabin laid out with my sleeping bag and pillows, started a fire to cook some dinner, and sat down to enjoy the peaceful mountain evening. I would guess it was around 9 p.m. when I headed to the cabin to lay down, read a little from my book, and get some rest as sunrise would come early for the next day, which is my alarm clock when I'm in the woods. And after about a half an hour or so reading my book, I heard a loud and painful crying type noise coming from the woods outside the cabin. What the hell was that? I thought to myself. I got up, grabbed my flashlight, my Ruger 357 Magnum revolver, which I always carry in the woods, and walked to the door to see what that was. And after standing there for a minute or so, I heard a loud howl coming from the north of the cabin. I've heard coyotes howl, but this was different. Then the most terrifying, bone-chilling, soul-shaking growl I've ever heard come from about 30 yards away, and it scared the absolute shit out of me. I've heard many bears growl, from grizzlies in Wyoming to black bears in Tennessee, and this was nothing like that. Whatever this was sounded angry, and like something out of a nightmare. I took the safety off on the revolver, aimed it in the general direction with my flashlight doing the same. I was shaking like a dog shitting razor blades. I've been in the war. I've looked evil in the eyes and not flinched while doing it. But I was terrified of what I just heard. I'm shaking right now typing this and thinking about that moment. Then this massive creature emerged from behind a grouping of trees walking east to west, carrying a dead deer over its left shoulder. As my light hit this thing, it dropped the deer, turned right at me, and stared. I've never seen anything in my life that had this kind of combination of height, weight, and overall size and power. The thing stood 8 to 9 feet tall, was probably 4 to 5 feet wide at the shoulders, and looked like it weighed anywhere from 500 to 700 pounds. And it was standing upright like a human. My first instinct was to shoot this thing, but I couldn't pull the trigger. I think it's because it looked so human-like, but it wasn't a human. But I still couldn't shoot. We stared at each other for what felt like minutes, but in reality it was only about 10 seconds. Then this thing jumped back behind the trees and hid. I lowered the gun but kept the flashlight on that group of trees. Whatever this was didn't seem to want to hurt me because as soon as I lowered my gun, it stuck its head back out, seeming to be just as curious about me as I was of him. I put the gun in my waistband and raised my right hand to show that I had nothing but the flashlight in my hands now. And then it walked back out of the trees and did the same thing I was doing. I lowered my hand and so did it. I raised my hand back up and it did the same thing. And all of a sudden I felt a calmness come over me during this interaction with it, and I was not scared anymore. This went on for a minute or so. Then this thing took off with this speed and agility something that size shouldn't have. It took 3 to 4 steps and went down the mountain around the corner with ease. It was amazing to watch. After this thing left, I got a very high anxiety feeling I've never had before, trying to figure out what the hell I just saw. That night was sleepless, and the revolver never left my hand. That night after that thing left. And when the sun came up, I packed up all my things, headed out of my cabin to see that the dead deer was gone. Did that thing come back for it when it knew I wasn't watching anymore? How did it know I wouldn't be waiting? I finished the remaining 8 miles of my hike with anxiety and fear of seeing that thing again, but I didn't. And that encounter changed my life and changed the way I listen to the sounds of the wilderness now. I still go on hikes around the U.S., but I do so with a very different appreciation for the woods and what lives in it. Once again, I thank you for what you're doing and look forward to many more stories from you about these things. There you go, you guys. Welcome to the club. Appreciate their being brave and honest and sharing that here. It means a lot. It always means a lot. Every single person that comes here, it really, really means a lot to everyone here. Wow. And not the first time that one's raised the hand when somebody's raised the hand, and not the first time when somebody had a gun and put it down that they got a calm feeling. I spoke to a guy directly that had the exact same thing happen. Come on. Where are we here? Sorry, guys. All right. One more. This next email is titled Bigfoot. First off, thanks for creating your channel, since Bigfoot is a real thing. Most people have not seen it, but many have. When I was about 9 in 1980, we lived in military housing in Massachusetts. It was off base, but near. It had woods and hills behind my place where I'd play all the time. And one Sunday morning about 11, I told my friend to meet at the spot we usually go. I take off my bicycle while he runs and grabs his bike and starts off. I was about 100 yards ahead on the dirt road that appears past the housing. Not too far is our spot. There's now thick woods on both sides of the road, and there is a trail that leads into the woods. I come in fast but quiet, and I lay my bike down and start walking to the trailhead, which is right there on the road edge. The trail goes up a small hill, then down into the dark forest. And as I was walking up this hill, a Bigfoot was walking toward me up the hill on the other side. I was walking quietly. This thing was silent. We both crested the top of the hill and nearly ran into each other. We were 10 to 15 feet apart when we instantly saw each other, and we both just stopped and froze. This thing seemed just as surprised as I was. I didn't sense aggression. I sensed it was intelligent. But I was so scared of its size, I took off running and jumped back on my bike. My friend was just pulling up, and I was freaked out of my mind, yelling for him to take off. I pedaled so fast I could have beat Lance Armstrong for real. When I saw this thing, it was walking just like a human. But it was all dark, covered in dark hair. And it was hard to tell the color since I just walked in from a sunny road to a dark forest. It was massive, about 8 to 10 feet tall with super wide shoulders and a heavy build with long arms. It had to be 800 pounds or more. It never made a noise. It just stopped walking and stood still. And I will never forget that crazy experience. This thing had to have been a Bigfoot because it couldn't be anything else. I didn't notice a smell, but maybe there was a side breeze. I don't know. But I know Bigfoot is real. It could have got me, I'm sure, but it didn't. I've never seen one since, but I've experienced wood knocking where I live now in southern Oregon near the California border. Way up on a mountain lake called Bolin Lake. Up by myself, there were wood knocks. I also know many people, and there are a couple I know and trust that have seen a Bigfoot in this area. There's a doctor here that saw one on record on a trail near a cave system, so I live in a super hot spot for it. But I've not tried to look for Bigfoot here. I retire in 1.5 years, so I may try then. Thanks for all you do. Please keep me anonymous. I gotcha. And that's a hell of a face-to-face for anything, right? face to face. And both parties in shock. How many times have we heard that one? Appreciate you sending that in, man. If you got any updates from living in Sasquatch Central, send them our way if you want. But anyway, I think I just about read myself to sleep. You're starting to wind down. You start reading, especially reading books. Reading books put me to sleep. Man, I'm having a tough time. It's going to take me a while to read through that Bible. I'll get there. And there you go. There you go. Pictures. I got to remember to put pictures. I've been pretty good lately. Remember before I just kept on forgetting to put the pictures in the video. I better get busy and do that right now. So, share my story at howtohunt.com. Get it off your chest and get it made public, all right? We don't have to share your name. And I'll be back later.